Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Leah and it is my favorite time of the year where we recap the books that we read. So this year I only read 35 books. I'm going to talk about that at the end of this video, what happened that impacted my book reading this year, but I still read 35 books and I'm so excited to talk about them. I know you have probably watched many end of the year book recap videos. That's fine. Mine is a little bit different, especially with how I tier rank them, because everyone tier ranks things differently. So for me, an S tier book is a book that I love. It is a book that I want to reread and maybe buy and put on my bookshelf. And because I have a very tiny bookshelf that I refuse to upgrade, that means it is a very special book because I have limited room and I have to be real picky about what goes on my bookshelf. An A tier book is a book that I think is fantastic. I think it is an amazing, incredible read. I'm so happy that I've read it, but I may not want to reread it again, which is why it does not end up on my bookshelf. A B tier book is a book that I think is okay. Like for me, I had a lot of problems with it, and that could have been like problems with the writing or problems with the story, or maybe I just didn't really vibe with the story. And so for me, that's a B. A C tier book is a book that I feel has just way too many problems with it that I'm just like, no. A D tier book, I don't know if any books will get a D tier this year. I've been really good about DNFing. So a D tier book is just a nah. It's a no for me. And then I have a special category at the end for my rereads and my reviews because I read those with the intention of either, hey, I love this story, or I want to revisit this story, or reviewing it for another author. And I don't think it's fair to be like, I personally wouldn't have read something like this, but yeah, I don't think that's fair to the author. So, I put that in that category. So let's get into what this video is actually about, and that is ranking books. So here are my 35 books that I have read this year. I have them grouped into the categories that I have read the most of. So first up is romance. And the first romance book that I read this year, Chef's Kiss. Disclaimer, it is actually by my friend Akanksha Aurora, but she's written it under her pen name Desi Buchanan. And so it's kind of, she calls it a modern love story, where it is about this girl who lives in LA, but she's from Mumbai, and she's having a lot of struggle in love. She also has a cursed love placement according to her astrology, but she's struggling a lot when it comes to love. And so things happen with her visa. She ends up having to go back to Mumbai for 6 months, I think. Maybe it's not 6 months, maybe it's just 3. But she goes back to Mumbai for a bit, and then there she has a situationship with a chef, and it really makes her rethink romance and its place in her life, and love, and all of these things that we have been taught to chase and find validation in, and like if that will actually give us fulfillment. And so for me, I remember texting her after I read it, and I was like, you are underselling this book. It has so much depth that I find that a lot of modern romances don't have, that I'm just like, ah. And also she is a writer that I look up to and that inspires me. So for me, I know this is kind of, I didn't get it to get a review, like I paid for the book myself and things like that, but I'm gonna say it's an S tier book for me. So now we have the Kiss Quotient series, which is by Helen Huang. It is a book talk fave, and sometimes when there are book talk books, I get a little, because half of them, I would say 80% of them, not good, but this is an exception. So in the first book, The Kiss Quotient, Stella wants to practice having more sex, and so she hires an escort, and then that escort, Michael, is like, she's too sweet and precious and pure, and I should just help her practice dating so that way she can find someone else in the future. And as we know, he falls in love with her, and then it's like this tension of, she's my client, I shouldn't fall in love with him, and her being like, I need to practice on him, I can't fall in love with him. So it's that sort of thing. I should also say she is autistic. She's autistic and she's Asian. So I should say that as well. But I think reading this book definitely made me delusional, because I'm like, I could also hire an escort and he would fall in love with me. It's just like a very dangerous situation in real life, but it made me delusional, right? The writing was just normal to me. I wouldn't say it was like exemplary, but I also wouldn't say it was bad. Like it was just a great book all the way around. I really enjoyed reading it, and I really enjoyed the characters as well, which leads to the bride test, which I think is my favorite out of this whole series. And it has Esme, who is in Vietnam, and then Kai's mom, I believe that's his name, Kai's mom, who goes to Vietnam because she's trying to find her son a wife. And so Esme has a daughter, which she hides from Kai because she's like, if he knows I have a daughter, he's not going to accept me. But I really loved Esme because she was like mentally tough, she was physically tough, she was emotionally tough. She was a go-getter, and I think out of the three main characters of this series, like she was definitely my favorite. And then there's Kai, who is the autistic person in this book. And Kai was just Kai. But I do kind of like that exploration of autism because both book one and book three talk about female autistic women, and then book two talks about a male autistic person. And so I really appreciate that. But Esme to me was just like the standout character of this book, and I just really, really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed her. And then there's the heart principle, where Anna's taking a break from her longtime boyfriend. She's trying to explore herself sexually, and then there's Quan, who's just getting over prostate cancer and finds out he can't have kids. And so they find each other on a dating app. Quan does the same thing that Michael does to Stella and was like, she really should not be in this kind of environment. Someone's going to take advantage of her. And so he takes it upon himself to be like, I'll be there for you and I'll teach you how to date, and we can, practice doing this because I'm not looking for anything serious because I can't have kids. So don't. And so they were trying to practice a relationship with each other. It has problems because she comes from a rich upper class family. Her parents want her to marry the man that she was also, her dad is in hospice care. And so she's having to drop everything she's doing to take care of her dad, which is impacting her relationships. And she's also struggling to like speak up for herself because she's also a people pleaser. There's a lot going on in that book. But for me, I still think it was an okay book. I think it was my least favorite out of the entire series, but it was still a really good book. So if I had to grade them, I would put The Kiss Quotient A, The Bride Test A, The Heart Principle B. I Accidentally Summon a Demon by Jessica Cage. I found this book again on TikTok. And for me, it is a very funny book. It is this woman who she gets drunk, I think, and then she does a spell in a book and she's like, it's whatever. And then she sees a demon at the end of her bed and she's like, obviously this is a dream. So she has sex with and then the next morning he's still there. She's like, this alcohol is really. And then they go on this like wild ride because he's wanted in the kingdom that he's from. And so they try to kidnap her, or they try to attack her to like get back at him. So now he has to like capture her and hold her hostage so that way no one can attack her. It's a lot of convoluted stuff. And part of me can kind of see the through line that the author did in here, but for me, I was just like, I think for me, about 60% of the way through, I was just over it. And I was just like, girl, can we wrap it up? And there were so many questions that I had because it was hinting to the main character having these special abilities and not being from Earth. And I'm like, is there going to be a sequel? Like, there were just so many questions that I had that were left unanswered that I just was not very, I don't know, I wasn't very happy with this book. So for me, I would give I Accidentally Summon a Demon Boyfriend a C. I have talked about this book so much. I love this book. I think this book is magnificent, perfect, every good thing on this planet. So, Moon Fuentes, twin sister, teenage girl. She's graduating high school, and she has always been responsible for her twin sister. Her mother has made it so that way anything that happens to Star, Moon, you're in charge, right? And so Star is going on this tour because she's Instagram famous or photogram famous. And so she's been invited last minute onto this tour, but Moon has to go and take care of her sister as well. And so Moon works merch with a Santiago who's this gloomy guy. And through her relationship with Santiago, she learns how to better take care of herself. And she also learns how to stand up to her sister and to her abusive mom. And so there's a lot of stuff that's going on in this book. It addresses fat phobia, it addresses parental abuse, it addresses purity culture, it addresses like suicide of a parent. Like it's some very, very heavy emotional stuff. But the way that Raquel Vasquez Gilliland writes, it just makes you so happy and so grateful for the life that you live and for the things that are in your life. Because it's like, even with all of these bad things going on, even all this grief and all of this sadness and all of this hurt, there's still so much beauty and love in the world. And so, yeah, this book, S tier, 1000%, but it was a reread for me. Is it my second or my third time reading it? I don't remember. But it was a reread for me. So we're putting it in the reread category. Can't Get Enough by Kennedy Ryan. So this is the last book in the Skyland series, which is about these women in their 40s finding love. And so Hendrix is in her 40s. She has this very big business opportunity with a partner, and so she goes to that I think it's her birthday party that she goes to, or is it a New Year's party? It's some party that her business partner is hosting that she goes to. She meets this man. He's beautiful. He's rich. He's everything that she could ever want in a man. They hit it off immediately. Later, that man is introduced to her as her business partner's longtime boyfriend, who her business partner is waiting for him to propose to her. And she's like, uh-oh. And so Hendrix is dealing with a lot. I think her mom has dementia. And so she's one of the primary caregivers for her mom while she also owns her own media company. She owns her own business. And then she is really thinking about this business deal. So she's like, I cannot let this man ruin it for me. And I think for me, I really liked that part of the story where it was really focused on this woman who was like, I worked so hard for the life I have. I will not throw it away for a man. Yeah. Yeah. But on the other hand, I think for me, I wasn't really feeling this story. Like, I think out of the series, my favorite is This Could Be Us, which is Soledad and Judah. That was my favorite of the series. And Hendrix and Maverick were okay to me as a couple, but I wanted more, right? I think two things. I wanted more, and it was way too long because there were a lot of parts that I was like, is her mom gonna die? Like, why is this book keep going? Because it was like Hendrix is struggling with being a primary caregiver for her mom. She's struggling to handle all that. I'm like, oh, okay, so her mom's gonna die. Her mom didn't die. So I was like, why does the book keep going? And then it was with Maverick. I was like, is something gonna happen with Maverick? Nothing happened with Maverick. I'm like, why is the book still going? And then I thought that the person who exposed Hendrix was working with, what was that woman's name? Whatever the Maverick's ex-girlfriend. I thought they were going to be working together and we were going to find them, and they didn't. And I was like, what? And then when I was reading in the back, Candy Ryan was like, I really wanted to have a book that talked about these things, women being taken to court over there. I was like, yeah, towards the end, it just felt very convoluted for me. And it was just like branching off in all these different directions. I was like, so I think for me, it's a B. Nick Stone, Chaos Theory. So, Chaos Theory is about Shelby and Andy. Shelby struggles with bipolar disorder, and then Andy struggles with addiction. And so Andy thinks he's texting his ex-girlfriend, and it ends up being Shelby. And then Shelby's like, hey, can you do me a favor and not drink and drive? Andy drinks and drive. He gets into a really bad accident. He gets his license taken away, and it's a very big scandal for his politician mom. And so he's having to deal with the ramifications of that, while Shelby's having to deal with the fact that she thinks she's unlovable, basically, because she has bipolar disorder and because it has been a strain on her friendships and her ability to date other people. And so Andy is developing feelings for Shelby, and Shelby keeps trying to push him back, but Shelby's also being like, you're not in a good place either, so you need to work on that. And so it's really about the two of them learning to work with their mental illnesses while also learning how can we be in relationship to each other without enabling the other person to be their worst. And so that's kind of what this book is about. And I think for me, it was an okay book. I can't really think of any problems that I have with it, but it also doesn't really stick out in my mind as much as other books do. And so for that, I would give it a B. A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. So this book is about Sarah is a witch who has lost her magic because she used it to resurrect her aunt, who is her primary caregiver because she has deadbeat parents who were like, we don't want to take care of this baby, and gave the baby to her aunt, to, I think is her father's aunt, and that's her primary caregiver. So when her aunt dies, she uses her magic to resurrect her, which basically gets rid of almost all of her magic. And so the reason this is important is that Sarah is one of the most powerful witches of her generation. And so with that gone, everyone is just like, why would you do something like this? And she kind of becomes this cautionary tale. She gets expelled from the school system that she's a part of. And then she's kind of lives in exile from the witch community. And so, despite that, her and her great aunt, they have this bed and breakfast basically where these interesting characters come up. And Luke has a younger sister who is autistic and who is struggling to control her magic. And so he seeks out Sarah to help him with, I think her name's Poppy, to help him with Poppy and help her be able to better control her magic. But over the course of that, right, Sarah and Luke end up falling for each other. Sarah already had a crush on Luke back when she was in school and Luke was in the library. She had a crush on him. Now that he's asking her for like her help and stuff, there's this. So yeah, so Sarah is trying to get her magic back in order to better help not only Poppy, but like all of the other people, because she's also dealing with the fox Clementine who tried to use a spell on someone else. It backfired. She turned into a fox. But there's a lot going on in this book. But unlike the other books where there's a lot going on, I really love this. I love the language that was used. Like it's very playful, whimsical language. I love the characters. Like we're using found family, and everyone is just so like, I wouldn't say wholesome, but everyone's really lovable, and you could see the way the characters interact with each other. I love when characters interact with each other with like warmth and tenderness, and also like playfulness. I love that. And then the romance, that was my problem with the very secret society of irregular witches, is that I felt like the romance was lacking. She more than made up for it with this. And I know this book was delayed by like a year and a half because the author was going through a lot with her family, but I'm like, this is an incredible book. It is an incredible book. I love it. I think about it all the time since I've read it. And so for me, S tier. Safety Net by Deanna Gray. This is, I don't know if it will be the last in her Mental Hawk series, but it is the third book in her Mental Hawk series with Lincoln and Celeste, who have liked each other since book one. So this is finally their book series where they get together. Lincoln is struggling in school. He's about to get kicked out of school because he has trouble focusing and concentrating, and he's super impulsive and things like that. So it's not a very good, he's also about to get kicked off the hockey team as well for the very same reasons. And Celeste is also about to get kicked out of school, not because she's not a good student, but because of her social anxiety, which has made her withdraw from like presentations and things like that needed to pass classes. So both of them are struggling, right? The thing that I like about this book is that from the beginning, they both like each other. We know this from Sunny Disposition. They both have crushes on each other. And so it's cute to see these two people who are like, they don't like me. And you know they like, I was like, oh, we've known this man has liked you since book one. And she's like, he doesn't like me. And he's like, she's so perfect. She could never want someone like me. And so I really love when characters are doing that from the beginning. From the beginning, these two people have crushes on each other. They like each other. And they are both helping each other with their problems. Lincoln is helping Celeste with her social anxiety and helping her with her school project to hopefully try to advance her career. And then Celeste is helping Lincoln with getting his life organized and doing the things he needs to do. And so what I love about Deanna Gray and her characters is that one character always has something to help the other character. They're always like a missing piece to the other character's life. And I really love that. This is no different. My gripe with this book, even though I loved a lot of it, it is too long. It was so windy. And I read it with a friend and she was like, the book was a little slow, but it makes sense because of Celeste and her sexuality and these. And I was like, that's not a good excuse. Like, I feel like Deanna Gray could have got to her point a lot quicker. I wouldn't say a lot quicker, just quicker than what she did. And so for me, I was just like, I was annoyed. I was just annoyed, especially towards the end, because I'm like, okay, so we wrapped up this and we wrapped up that and we wrapped up that. Now we just got to wrap up this. And it just kept going and going and going and it wasn't getting wrapped up. And I'm like, that's how I feel. Like once plot points start getting wrapped up, I'm like, okay, we're finishing. And they're like, you know what? Let's drag this plot point out. No, finish it. And so that's how I felt about Safety Net. So for me, it's a B. Witchful Thinking by Celestine Martin. This is one of my favorites. It's about Lucy, a witch who feels like she is boring, and Alex, a merman who feels like he is chaotic and unstable. And so what I love is that Lucy feels like I need more excitement in my life. And then Alex feels like I need more stability in my life. And what they need is the other person. Like, again, like Safety Net, it's the same thing here. And so Lucy and Alex were friends in high school and they both had crushes on each other. They did not know about the crushes they had on each other. And so right after high school, Lucy was going to tell Alex how she felt. Alex left town and they have not seen each other for the past decade. And so now Alex is back in town and they're meeting up with each other. And then Alex's mom bought him a house, which is the house right across from Lucy that Lucy has always wanted. And so Alex is helping Lucy be more exciting and do more of the things that Lucy has always wanted to do, but felt like she could not do it. And Lucy is helping Alex make a home because Alex has never really had a home. He's always been traveling with his family because they're merfolk and they like to be nomadic. And he's never really stayed in a place and settled before. And so Lucy is trying to help him with that. And so for me, I really love this series. Like, it is a bunch of whimsical Black people. It's my first time ever coming across something like that. And it holds up upon reread. I think for me, the difficulty in rereading this book is that I was experiencing similar things to these main characters. And I was like, this is going to make me delusional. So therefore, I need to stop reading it. But I kind of wanted to finish reading it. But I was also like, I can't be delusional. I can't be delusional. So for me, personal reasons was having me conflicted over here. But it's still a great read upon reread. And it's going to my reread section. Okay, so my next genre that I read the most was poetry. We did romance, poetry. And I started poetry this year with Perfect Black by Crystal Wilkinson. It was a reread for me, and I read it again because I was using it for a workshop that I taught back in April, May for Sis Stories. And so I wanted to use part of Perfect Black because I felt like that was a perfect example of it. So the first time I read Perfect Black, I really appreciated Crystal Wilkinson for like going there in terms of Black girlhood in the South and how no one views you as precious, right? Everyone views you as public property. And what does that mean for you as you are trying to come into who you are sexually and sensually and just as a person when everyone is like, oh no, you belong to me, you belong to me, you belong to all these unwanted hands on you. And so she talks about that. She talks about growing up in a religious community, and she talks about having to discover who she is and learning that the way that she shows up as a Black person, which is female, which is fat, which is Southern, is perfect, which is country, right? It's perfect. It's perfect. And so that's really what I loved about it. And that's whenever people are like, ask for poetry recommendations, this tends to be one of my top ones because of that. So I'm going to put Perfect Black in rereads. Homie by Denez Smith. I listened to this as an audiobook and I loved it. If you are a button poetry girly, I believe Denez Smith was on button poetry, but if you are a button poetry girly, I highly recommend you listen to this on audiobook. So it's Denez Smith and they're performing poems about friendship and about love and about who they are as they're coming into their queerness and who their community is and things like that. I think the original title was Nig, but they were like, I can't have white people buying a book that says Nig on it. Which, fair point. But it is about that sort of camaraderie, right, between Black people and Black people across this country. And so for me, I really love the performance of this book. I think it's stellar, and I also think it adds value to this because I don't think I would buy this poetry book as a book. I think it needs to be performed. And I feel like that is where the value of this comes from. So for me, as a performance, this is an S tier book. Heirloom by Ashia Johnny. So I came across this book because Ashia Johnny is a follower of my podcast and they are an eco baddie, right? And so there were a lot of similar themes between their work and also my work. So I was like, let me check this out. And also I knew that this book was talking about Mississippi a lot. And so this book talks about migration. Ashia Johnny is a grandchild of Mississippi. I believe their grandma is from Mississippi, and then their mom was born in Detroit, and then they were born in Colorado. So they're of the Mississippi diaspora, right? And they talk about the connection between land and land displacement and colonialism and Black suffering and how all of these things are interconnected. And that's really what I love about it is the connection between like nature. I wouldn't even say nature, but like the destructive forces of nature and how colonialism ties into that and how it impacts Black people. And so I think it's a very smart collection. It can be dense in places. I will warn you, it can be dense in some places. I told my friend, I was like, it may take you a while to get through it, but she is a better reader than me because she was like, I didn't struggle with that at all. I was like, oh, JK, I struggle with it a little bit, but she didn't struggle with it, so it was a little dense for me. But overall, I do really think it is a standout collection. I do think as well that it is something that you have to read and reread and really sit with. But I also really like poetry that you like sit with, and upon revisiting, like you have a different interpretation of it. So this is one of those collections. I do really recommend it, and I would put it at an A. Don't Call Us Dead by Denez Smith. This was another one that I heard as an audiobook, and so I listened to this after listening to Homie, which I think may have been a mistake. So this one, in this book, Denez Smith talks specifically about being diagnosed HIV positive. And so the background of that, right, being called slurs, both for being Black and for being queer, and then growing up and having this other label, this other stigma attached to you. And they talk about that whole journey. And so for me, I felt like a lot of the themes in this reminded me of Homie. And so because of that, it did not have as much of an impact on me as Homie did, because in Homie, they also talked about being HIV positive in this really like poem, this really like I don't want to say heartbreaking, but it was just this heart-wrenching maybe poem where they were talking about trusting a man and that man betraying them and giving them HIV. Yeah. But yeah, it's like that, like it just sticks with you. right? But I remember that more from Homie than I do from Don't Call Us Dead. So Don't Call Us Dead, I would give a B just because I think Homie is just a better exploration of those ideas. Good Dress by Brittany Rogers. So this book starts off with a poem called Money that is also kind of a tribute to Cardi B's Money. And it goes into this exploration of mental illness and sexuality and really struggling to figure out who you are and your place in this world. And it uses a lot of pop culture references, like there are three Frollo Millie shits in there. They're talking about is it Detroit Pistons? I think it is the Detroit basketball players. And they're talking about the cam where everyone's in their flashy jewelry. And then something else that I really love that Brittany Rogers did is that she would go back to the beginning. It was kind of like the circular thing where it was an initial view of an event, like the kiss cam, an initial view of Black people and they're gaudy and they're flashy and then this and then that. And then she goes back to it at the end and she talks about the body being an altar and where you can display your dead. And so the locket, having the person who's dead around your neck, wearing grief like a necklace. Like, it was just, for me, it was just such a brilliant collection that I'm like, if you do not have this, you need it. You need, like, it is just so brilliant and beautiful. And I just love someone who can weave pop culture references into something and make it fun and playful, but also make it have depth. Because I think a lot of people view pop culture as being frivolous, and it's not. There's a lot of depth there. And so I really appreciate someone like Brittany Rogers for like shining a light on that. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Beyond the Watershed by Nadia Alexis. So I know Nadia Alexis IRL, and some of these poems I have actually already read by her. And so this poetry collection is talking about being the daughter of Haitian immigrants and I don't want to say the abuse, but just kind of like the struggles. I think she's also an eldest daughter. So the struggles of living with her parents, especially when her father did not treat her mother right. And then Nadia growing up, being a teenager, young adult, experienced a domestic abusive relationship herself. And so it is about her going through those struggles and then emerging and figuring out who she is at the end of it. I feel like that's a common theme. I feel like that's a common theme among poetry, but that is what this is as well. And so for me, I think this is Nadia's debut. I think it is a standout collection. And I think if any of those things interest you, I would definitely say check it out. So I would give it an A. So my third top genre was fantasy, and I'm putting spec fic because some of these are not quite fantasy, but fantasy, spec fic, horror, all of those things is my third top genre. And so the legacy of the Orisha series, if you have been on this channel, you know how I feel about this series. But let's get into it book by book. Children of Blood and Bone, which is the beginning series. We start with Zelly, who is in a school under Mama Agba, and she is training. But then these soldiers come by and they have to hide their training. And so Zelly has a heated moment with one of the soldiers. And then her dad is like, her dad and her brother are like, how could you do something like this? And she's really frustrated and angry with the occupation of their village. And so they have to pay some kind of tax. Her father's like, we don't have the money. And then the options are Zelly can either be a slave or they can go into the city to get to sell items in order to pay the taxes because the taxes have increased again. So they go into the city. Zelly and her brother Tazin, they go into the city. Zelly bumps into someone and then the guards are after Zelly and this mystery person. And the mystery person ends up being Amari, who is the princess, right? And so Amari's like, please hide me. And Zelly does not want to because she's like, I got things I need to do. Like, you were the reason my family is in this situation. But eventually Tarzan's like, oh, we gotta protect the princess. We gotta hide her. We gotta do this. We gotta do that. And so they eventually do protect the princess. And so the castle or the royalty and their guards, right? They're after Amari because they're trying to capture her and bring her back. So Amari left because she found out her dad was actually evil, which everyone else in the kingdom knew, but she finally found out when her dad killed her bestie, who was their maid. And so that's why she left. Her dad and the guards are trying to find her again. And so Tazan, Zelly, and Amari have to leave once Zelly's kingdom gets, or once her village gets burned down. And so they're forced to go. There's so much like world building that needs to be said. Like, so the legacy of the Orisha are like white-haired people with magical gifts, but the magic has been taken away. And so Amari is trying to help Zelly and Tazan bring that magic back. And so they have to kind of go on this journey to do that while also having to duck and dodge the guards. And Inan, who is the leader of the guards, Amari's brother, they also have to dodge him as well. And so it's just, there's a lot. There's a lot, but it should be a lot. It's a trilogy. And so for me, when I finished the first book, I was just kind of like, okay. Like, I didn't feel like it was amazing, spectacular, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad either. It was just okay. It was okay for me. And so I was kind of on the fence about whether or not to read book two, Children of Virtue and Vengeance. I'm glad I did read book two. I think it's a lot better than book one because we get a lot more character development and we see the characters actually go there. Like in all of book one, I didn't like Amari because she was very weak and she was like, I can't do anything. I'm helpless. I just keep being attacked. I didn't want to hear that. But in book two, Amari was being cold hearted because look at who her daddy is. Look at where she comes from. She's not divorced from that, right? Same thing with Anan. They're both backstabbing people because look at where they come from. Like they're not divorced from that. And I do really appreciate Tomi Adeyemi for showing something like that instead of being like, Amari's innocent despite who her dad is. It's like, no, look at where she come from. Yeah, that's in her too. And she needs to overcome that because that's part of her inheritance. And so I really appreciate that because I feel like, especially in a lot of young adult, they would go the way of Amari is an exception to her family, and she's not. And she's not. So I really, really, really loved and appreciated that. And then there's Children of Anguish and Anarchy. For the first two books, we have the Orisha, the country, Orisha, and all of the infighting that is going on between the people who want the magic to come back and the people who want to keep the magical people oppressed. Right? We have all of this infighting. Book three, they're like, forget everything that has happened. We're gonna do something different, and the infighting that figured itself out behind the scenes. In the legacy of Orisha, they not even an Orisha. They out in another country helping other people, and there's all these other yeah. I'm better because when that first happened, I was pissed off. I'm better than what I was, but for me, I think the difficulty with that book is that as a standalone, it would have been a great book. As a standalone, I'd be like, everybody needs to read this. It's a very good book. As the third book in a trilogy, as the finale of a trilogy, terrible. Terrible. And it really made me upset because I'm like, the Legacy of Orisha series was never finished. What is this? Tell me, Adeyemi. I saw this thing on Instagram that was like, which literary celebrities would you want to sit beside? And I was like, Tomi Adeyemi, because I got some questions about Children of Anguish and Anarchy, and I need her to answer. So when it comes to ranking them, I would give Children of Blood and Bone a B, Children of Virtue and Vengeance an A, Children of Anguish and Anarchy a D. So now we have Oathbound, the long-awaited third book in Tracy Dion's Legend-Born cycle. And so in Oathbound, we finally find out what happens to Bree after the Shadow King takes her. And so the first half of this book kind of operates as a transition book. And for me, I call a transition book a book where you got to figure out how we got from point A to point B, right? Because if we went, she's here and then she's there, you're going to be like, wait, what happened in between? And so that's like the first half of this book. It is a lot slower paced than what I'm used to with the Legend-Born cycle. It did take me a while to get through, I'm not even gonna lie. But the second half of this book, I read in a night. I read 300 pages in one day because it is what we expect from a Legend-Born book. It's picking up the pace, it's fast moving, and it is not only filling in the gap of like what happened to Bree, we also get multiple POVs. We get Williams, we get Nick, we get Natasha Kane, she finally shows up. We get all of these other different characters. We fill in all of these other different pieces that we would not have been able to fill in if we just had Bree's POV. And we also learn more about the Shadow King. We get new characters. Like there's so much going on in this book that I love it. I'm so excited for the fourth and final book. I know I have to wait at least a year. Tracy Dion. But yeah, everything about this book, I'm like, Tomi Adeyemi, you need to call up Tracy. I feel like y'all got each other's numbers. You need to call up Tracy Dion and be like, how do you write a sequel to a book? Because sometimes there are parts that are not as beautiful and as shiny, but they are necessary, right? And that's what I feel about the first half of Oathbound. Tracy Dion finally answered questions that were posed in book 1 and book 2, questions that we have been asking. She answered them. And it's not very sexy to answer those questions, but it is necessary. So that way we can get to the next part, which is very sexy. So that's why I'm like, she did what she needed to do with this book. I'm very happy with it. And for me, I would give it an S. Out of Body by Nia Davenport. And so this is a young adult book where this girl, she makes friends. I think her friend's name is Elsie. I think that's like the girl's name. She makes a friend and then they go to a party and then Elsie's like, let's do some drugs. And she's like, I don't do drugs. But she trusts her friend and she was like, fine, I'll do a little drugs with you. And then when she wakes up, she's like, oh, I feel weird. And then she walked to her house and her parents are like, what are you doing here? You're not our daughter. And she's like, what are you talking about? I am your daughter. And then she sees herself come down the stairs. She's like, that's not me. What's going on? And then she finds out that she is now LC. So she's like, LC must be the person in my body. And so now she's trying to get back into her body while also trying to figure out why would LC body swap with her. And then she goes on this whole journey of uncovering LC's background, where she came from, why she's doing things like this, what's going on, all of these things. And so for me, it was a very interesting book. It was a very interesting concept. I read it because I enjoyed The Blood Trials and The Blood Gift by N.E. Davenport, same person. But I enjoyed those. So I was like, maybe I'll enjoy this too. And I think for me, again, this is just a book that I was like, this is okay. It's okay. It didn't stand out for me. I wouldn't say it was like spectacular or anything, but it was okay. It wasn't bad. You know, it was okay. It was okay. So B. So my fourth top genre of this year is literary. And so one of the first literary books I read this year was A Raisin in the Sun, which is a play by Lorraine Hansberry. It's also a classic. And it is about this family where the matriarch is super excited because she's going to get a check. And the check is from her husband dying. So it's his life insurance policy. I believe she's going to get this check. It's going to change their family's life because right now it is her son and her daughter, and then her son's wife. And is it one kid or two? I think it's one kid. Her son's wife and one kid. And they all live in a 2-bedroom apartment. And so she's like, when we get this check, we can finally move out of the ghetto. We can change our life. We can do this. We can do that. And so it's kind of about this family just hoping and wishing and praying that they get this money. And so when I read this book, I just thought, I was like, damn, I probably should have read this in high school. It probably was on my AP English reading list, but half them books were not great and they were very boring. But this was actually very good and I really enjoyed it. And I think the one thing that I remember from it was the son who upset me so much because I'm like, I know so many black men just like him. Like it was just so realistic that it made me angry. And so I'm like, you know what? Lorraine Hansberry, she did her big one. She did her big one because I was just like, I was so angry reading this book because I was like, I know so many people like, and not just that, like his mama. I know people just like his mama who'll be like, my grown baby boy who has a wife and a child of his own. He's just a baby. He's just a boy. He doesn't know what he's doing, even though he ruined all of our lives. But I can't. I'm like, that book angered me. It just brought out such strong emotions in me. But I'm like, that is good writing. That is good writing to make me feel that visceral about this book. Oh, it's S tier. House of Cotton by Monica Brashears. I came across this book in The Black Girl Survives in this one. I was looking at the stories I really liked and seeing if the people who wrote the stories wrote a longer work. And this was, I think she was the one that was the skittering thing. I think that was her story, which was just kind of weird. And I was like, and kind of scary. Or maybe I forgot which one. I think that was her. I think that was maybe. But anyway, in House of Cotton, it starts off with our main character. She is 19, 20, very young, and her grandma dies. So she's at her grandma's funeral. She doesn't know what she's going to do because her grandma's checks have been keeping her alive. And her grandma is her main guardian. Like, I think her dad is dead, and her mom is a drug addict. I think that's where her parents are. And so her grandma is her dad's mom who is taking care of her since she was a little girl. And so she is coming back home from her mom's funeral. Her deacon, one of the deacons of the church, who is also her landlord, is taking her home and he's propositioning her. He's like, oh, I I can do a deal with you. Your grandma's not here anymore, and I know you're gonna struggle to pay the rent. So it's like we could have set up a little arrangement if you want, so you ain't gotta pay rent like that. Yeah, that was him. And so he ends up forcing the arrangement, I'll say that, on her. And so she's kind of like, I can't stay in the house anymore because it has bad vibes. And so she finds Cotton, or no, Cotton finds her while she's at work. And Cotton's like, you have the perfect face for modeling. I have some modeling that I want you to do. So Cotton is like this middle-aged white man, very eccentric. They are in Kentucky. They're in one of like the Appalachian places. I don't think it's the South. I think it's one of them Appalachian places. I think they're in Kentucky. But Cotton's like, oh, I got some modeling you can do. And she's like, I ain't never heard of no modeling around here for what you want. But he has like these weird propositions for her where she dresses up as the dead, but he pays her enough that way she can pay her rent in full. So she does it. And so she don't have to deal with that deacon who raped her. That's the main premise of this book. And so it's kind of like her and Cotton and what her relationship with Cotton and his aunt brings out in her. And so for me reading this book, it made me very angry because again, I know men like that. Old ass men, and especially me, because I look young, they love to be like, let me holler at you. And I was like, if women your age think I'm a teenager, you're not smarter than them, right? And they're old and they're disgusting and they're nasty. And so for me, that book was just like, like I was so angry reading it. I will say the one downside to that book is the poetic, flowery language. Like in the beginning, I was like, oh, this is cute. This is cute. But towards the end, it got real old, real fast. And I'm like, girl, finish the book. Finish the book. Oh my gosh. It just be like that. Like whenever an author just wants to get long-winded towards the end, I'm like, we should be wrapping this up. And I just get annoyed when they do that. So for me, I'm torn between putting this in A and B. I would say it's more of a B. It's more of a B. Yeah. So next we have Dominion by Addie E. Kitchens. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. And so this book is set in Dominion, Mississippi. That's anything that has Mississippi and Black people. I'm like, sign me up. This book set in Dominion, Mississippi, and it is about the mother and the girlfriend of the son of the preacher. It is about that. And so it's talking about the men who have dominion over women's lives. I believe that's like the thesis statement. But in this story, it is this girl, she kind of hates her life because she's a foster kid and then she's separated from her siblings. And so she just kind of wants a family again. She does have her foster mom, who's a good influence on her life, but her foster mom is the one that takes her to church. And at church is where she sees the preacher's son who plays the drums. And then he's also like the quarterback at his school. He goes to a private school. He's like the quarterback at his school. Maybe he's not the quarterback, but he's like a good football player. And he's expected to go places and to do things. And then his mom is the preacher's wife, and she has a drug problem. And so she's trying to hide that from people, but everyone knows, or like we all know she got a drug problem. And I believe her husband is cheating on her as well, and he's the pastor. So there's a lot of mess going on in this small Mississippi town. And I believe it's set in the 90s. I don't think it's set in today. I think it's set in the 90s. Yeah, there's a tragedy that happens in their town, and it's told through these two women how it impacts the preacher's family. I think that's the best way I can sum it up. I think for me, again, this book was just, it wasn't long-winded, which I did appreciate. And I think it went over everything that it was supposed to go over, but also for me, I was just kind of like, like it wasn't a bad book, but I wouldn't say it was stellar either. So for me, that's a B. Daughter of Fire by Sophia Robledo. So this book is literary fiction. It's also historical fiction. It is set in 1550s Guatemala, and it's right after colonialism starts and right after they've set up a government and things like that. And so the main character is the daughter, the biracial, mixed indigenous daughter of the governor. And so she is struggling because her mom, who was forced to marry her father, by the way, her mom, as a child, her mom was really trying to instill in her, like, we need to keep our indigenous ways going, but we can't do it in front of your father because he will have us killed, right? And so she's trying to share the stories of her people. She's trying to share the language and things like that. And so when she grows up for her 16th birthday party, where she is introducing herself to society, the Lord of the indigenous people, Lord Juan, he comes to her, he speaks in Quiche, and she's like, oh, I don't know what that is. You're trying to out me. Like, I'm not trying to die like my mom did. Also, I should say her mama died because of that, because they knew her mom was still practicing her indigenous ways and they murdered her. And so she's paranoid now because she's like, they're trying to get me. I can't speak Quiche in front of people because they're going to know and they're going to tell people. And she's also trying to partner with Lord Juan because Catalina, which is her name, Catalina was left with the Popol Vuh, which is the kind of like the Bible of her people. And she has the only copy. And so Lord Juan is like, I want that. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have it. I don't know. Because again, she's like trying to not only protect her people, her language, her stories, she's also trying to protect herself because she's like, my mom died for this, and I don't want to give this to you and you do something with it after my mom died for it. Like and she's being very possessive of it, which makes a lot of sense. So anyway, the Popol Vuh ends up getting destroyed. They have to recreate it because they are part of the three main bloodlines that created it. And so, as being part of that lineage, they are tasked with recreating the Popol Vuh so that way their people can have their stories and their stories will not be lost to time and to colonization. So, that's basically the story and what's going on. And so, for me, reading this, I just really loved it. It's always so interesting. So this book was actually a free book on Amazon, and sometimes those free Amazon books are bangers. Sometimes they're not great, but this to me was definitely a banger. I really loved it. I love the language that was used. I love that it was about 1500s Guatemala, and it was a critique of colonization. I didn't really like, but I understand that's the main character. It was like, I have to choose between my people, but I also felt like that wasn't super heavy in this book. Every other thing wasn't like, I'm Spanish, but I'm indigenous. It wasn't like that. So I really appreciated that. And I don't know, I really liked it. I really liked the writing style. And I just really liked the story that she was trying to tell. So for me, it's an A. Okay, so my next genre was short stories. And so I started this year with The Women of Brewster Place. That is another Black classic that I have never read before. And so The Women of Brewster Place, it starts out with Maddie, who is at Brewster's Place. She's moving into Brewster's Place. And it goes into her backstory of her being a quote unquote good girl, doing everything she's supposed to do. She's getting the grades, she's going to church, she's doing whatever. But I think one day her parents went to church and she didn't. And this man who just, he'd be around town, he saw her and he's like, you should come with me and we should go on a walk. And she's like, whatever. And then she has sex with him because she's like, why not? But from that, she has a baby. And so she gets disowned by her family and she's trying to figure out how to raise this baby by herself. And her son ends up taking pretty much everything from her. He takes her time, he takes her energy, he takes her love, and then eventually he ends up taking her house and her money. And so she ends up destitute at Brewster's Place, which is a like low income housing place. So she ends up there. And so the short story collection's interconnected because the women, they come back and their stories build on each other, but it's about the different women and their lives at this place and the things that they're going through. And so for me, I just feel like it was a beautiful collection. It not only showed the range of Black womanhood, but it shows the different types of experiences that Black women go through and how we all like can either support that or kind of destroy that. And so I think it was really well done. I loved um Gloria Naylor's writing style. I felt like it was simple, but like with little embellishments on it. So for me, I really loved that as well. And I don't know. I thought it was a really stellar collection. I bought it for my bookshelf. So I think we know where this is going. It's an S tier book for me. Next, we have Let's Play White by Cheshire Burke. It is a speculative fiction short story collection. It's something that I recommend a lot. So I was like, let me reread it. And a lot of the stories, so there's a story of zombies, there's a story of this conjure woman who lives in the ghetto and who resurrects the dead in order to kill a drug dealer and rapist. The titular story, Let's Play White, is about this man who may be going insane. And he's in his house, he can't pay his rent, and he becomes frenemies with a rat. And the rat tells him, let's pretend to be white people. And so it's all of these like strange and whimsical types of stories. And so for me, I recommended this a lot because I had never read something like this. And I feel like sometimes when you've never read something, you're like, this is the best thing I've ever read. And then you go back to it and you're like, maybe it's not the best. And so for me, I don't think that this was a bad collection. I do still think that there were some stories that had some value, but for me, it was just not as good upon reread. And so for that, I would give it a B. On Girlhood by Gloria Edom. This book I found in the thrift store and I got for $0.25. So it is a book that is filled of literary stories about girlhood from like Zora Neale Hurston to now. And so for me reading it, there were some things like Recitative by Toni Morrison that I had already read. I feel like there was another in there that I had already read. But for me, a lot of them were just kind of, I'm gonna say the word okay. And to me, a lot of them were just kind of boring. Like I would read them and then immediately forget what I had just read. And it also took me a while to get through this collection. So that could also be it, that I was just, by the time I finished the book, I was like, I don't even know what the book's about. I didn't know what the book was about anymore. And so for me, I would probably give this a C, not because the book was bad, but just because I wasn't interested in the story that it had to tell. The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. This was a reread for me. I read it for the first time, I want to say in 2021. And I think, like most people who read at that time, Peach Cobbler really stood out to me as this very incredible story. And so, Peach Cobbler is the story of this little girl who watches her mom painstakingly make peach cobbler for the pastor of their church every Monday. And so, through that story, it's kind of talking about how peach cobbler is this symbol of devotion, right? Because she makes a peach cobbler from scratch. She don't even like, her mom doesn't even like peach cobbler, but she makes peach cobbler from scratch for the pastor who she's sleeping with. But she will not even allow her daughter to have a taste of it. Right? Her daughter's eating it out of the trash can because that's how much she wants her mom's devotion. But she doesn't get it. Right? And it's just this heart-wrenching story that really sticks with you. And I think upon rereading it, I'm like, there are so many other great stories here as well. Like the first story, Eula, of these two women who grew up. They were best friends, and around the time they were 30, they had gotten drunk, they had slept together, and they were like, you know what? I kind of really like this. And so one wanted to be a real partner to the other, but the other one's like, I'm still trying to find my husband, and you need to be finding your husband too, because we are children of God, and I'm still a virgin. So, and she was like, you have me on your mouth. What do you mean you're still? One was delusional, and the other one wanted to be with her. And so it was that story, and then there was another story of this couple who had left everything they had known to be with each other because their families did not approve of them being queer. And one of them, she's just really struggling with the ice and how cold it is and how unforgiving. And she's like, I want to go back to the South. I want to be back around people. Because for her, so for the main character, her mom loves her. Her mom just does not accept her being queer. For the other character, her mom completely disowned her. And so there's tension between those two because they're like, we have different relationships with our parents. And so they have different relationships to each other. So whereas the partner is like, you are my home, the main character is like, my home is with my mom, right? And so that causes tension between them. And then they're in this icy place, and she's having a meltdown because she's like, I just want to go be with my mother. And the other one's like, I don't have that. And so they're trying to like talk about how they have different privileges, how they have different disadvantages in this relationship, while also trying to find out like who they are in this. I say that again, who they are in this. It's just, I don't know. It was a very beautiful expose. And then I remember watching an interview that Disha Philyaw did where she talked about, where actually the interviewer asked her, was the woman in Instructions for Married Husbands, I think, the same, Married Christian Husband, I think that's the title, is the same as the girl from Peach Cobbler. And I never noticed that when I read it the first time, but upon rereading, I'm like, I see it. So for me, it was just like, it was a lot better the second time around. I still think it is an incredible short story collection. And if you have not read it, read it. Like, it's not very hard to read. And because I don't think that Disha Philyaw writes in a way that's like very flowery or poetic, not like someone like Tracy Dion does. I think she writes in a very simple, straightforward way, but it's just the characterization and the themes that she covers and the way she approaches dialogue, and it's just all of that together really makes it great storytelling. So I think that she's also a really good example of like, you don't need the flashiest sentence to tell the best story. So I recommend this one, but it is going in my reread. My next genre is memoir. And the first memoir I read this year is a graphic memoir called Weirdo by Tony Weaver Jr. And so Weirdo follows this young Black boy who is in a predominantly white school, and he struggles with bullying. And so he is having mental illness issues, and then he tries to commit suicide. And so this book talks about the struggles with mental health, especially when you are a token or you're the only Black person in a white place. And then him coming to learn, this is who I am, and these are the sorts of people that make me feel seen. And so he felt seen around other Black weirdos, right? Him embracing being weird instead of being normal like his parents want him to be, or normal like the white people want him to be. Him embracing being weird, him finding other Black people who are weird just like him. It's set for middle grade, so it's a middle grade type memoir. But for me, I found a lot of value in it, even being an adult. And so I'm putting this in reviews because I read it. I got it for free. Got it for free. And I read it because I was interviewing Tony. But yeah, even having interviewed him, I still enjoyed this book a lot, even though it's not for me. And I do think that young people, especially Black people who are like one of the few or the only in a predominantly white place, I think they would find a lot of value in this book as well. A Small Place with Jamaica Kincaid. It is like a memoir. It's kind of nonfiction memoir. Anyway, it is about Jamaica Kincaid, and she talks about a small place being Antigua, which is where she's from. And in this, I called it a scathing critique of colonialism. It is under 100 pages, not very long, but in it, she talks about, if you are a traveler and you go back to my home country, this is what you're going to see. And she talks about the history of it, right? The buildings that you see are a result of colonialism. The roads that you're driving on, you're in the privileged side of town. Like the tourism that you're benefiting from, the way that this place is so cheap, right? It's such a good deal for you to take a break from your boring 9 to 5, and you get to go to exciting Antigua, where the people there don't get to have a break. The people there don't get to have experience Antigua in the way that you experience Antigua. The people there have to deal with the brunt of your actions because you want the good parts and they don't get the good parts, right? It was gay. It was so good. It was so good. It's not that long. So I would give it an A. Men We Reaped by Jasmine Ward. I've read this book before. I actually, not long after Jasmine published this book, she was at my college and she was talking about how she will never write memoir again. And I think for the most part, she has not written another memoir. And I don't blame her. It is very, very, very hard work. And I think people who are like, it's just about your life, honestly, the book is divided between these 4 men in her lives who died within I think it was a 4 year span. And the last boy, which was actually the first one that died, was her brother. And so she talks about that and she imagines like this is probably what their death would have looked like. And she talks about their life before and how she experienced it. And then she goes back and forth between like that time and then the aftermath of it. And it just really, I think they were very beautiful, very thorough portraits of these men and the lives that they led and the contributions they made to like her society and to her. It was a very loving tribute. I think that's the words I was trying to say. But at the same time, it's heavy. It's very difficult. And I think for me, I was rereading it again because I haven't read it since in the past 6 years. I think it's been 6 years since I read it. So I was rereading again, but then I was also looking at how she approaches memoir. And it's a masterclass in both ways. I'm just like, she's so talented. Oh my gosh, she's so good. But yeah, that it is a heavy book. I would say that is a cornerstone of Jessamine Ward's writing. Heavy but warm. There's a lot of warmth there, like a weighted blanket. Yeah. But I'm gonna put this in my rereads because I reread it. And then we have Black Earth Wisdom by Leah Penniman. I read this as part of Hoodoo Plant Mama season 10, where we talked about Black environmentalism. So in this book, Leah Penniman is interviewing other Black environmentalists across the board. And so they're talking about Black people's role in environmentalism, how we're not a part of that, and what we should and shouldn't be doing, and all of the work that is being done behind the scenes that may not be front and center because environmentalism is seen as a white space, and the impact that has on Black people. So this is, I will say, this is not nonfiction. This is my nonfiction reads. I probably should have said that first. So this is part of my nonfiction reads, but I really enjoyed this book. I do highly recommend it to a lot of people. Although I did have to read this for my podcast, I do think it is very important that a lot of people read it and engage with it because it really opened my eyes to the work that I'm doing because I work in environmentalism and it's me and one other Black person on our team. So they are right. It is a very white field. It is something that Black people don't think a lot about, but it is something that impacts Black people as well. So it is a book that I recommend. And it's good. And I'm going to give it an A. How to Go Mad Without Losing Your Mind by Lamar Jarrell Bruce. This is another nonfiction read where Lamar Jarrell Bruce is exploring the idea of madness. And so he posits that Black madness is a natural, rational response to white reason. And so he calls white reason all of the justification under white supremacy as to why whiteness is supreme and everyone else is inferior. And he says Black madness is a reasonable response to that. And a lot of it is him being like, we should not view madness as a bad thing. Instead, we should question what madness is and why we have come to view it as a bad thing. And so I really thought that this was a very intelligent, sophisticated read of the idea of madness, especially, and so his main focus was madness in art and how it shows up in art. And so I think for me, it gave me a lot of language around one of my books, Apocalypse Still, and rage, which is a form of madness. Because I'm like, that's really what it is. It's like, it's rage at the system and the way it constricts and punishes and tries to make you into something you're not. And it's like, we got a lot to be mad about. And that was Solange said, we got a lot to be mad about. I really enjoy a lot of the language and a lot of the ideas that he was presenting in this book. I will say, again, sometimes I love a poetic voice, but I feel like there's a balance. And he went a little too far for me. But other than that, I still think it is an incredible book. Great ideas were presented, great theories. I want everyone to read this book and get back to me. And I'm going to give it an A. Now we're at my last book of the year by Kiese Layman. It is a picture book, City Summer, Country Summer. So City Summer, Country Summer, I would say it's like a literary picture book. Where is this? I think City, is that his name? That may be his name. Do they have names? I forgot. The main character, he lives in, I want to say he lives in Jackson, Mississippi, but I know he lives in Mississippi, and his cousin's coming down from Chicago. And so they have questions about like, you're from down south, you're from up north, those sorts of things. And then they go on this adventure through their grandma's garden. And then they come to like be like, oh, you're okay in my book. I feel like I'm having a bad time discussing this. My beef, and I've talked with a friend about this because we both read it, because we love Kiese and we definitely support him in a lot of the work that he's doing. But my beef with this is I was like, who is this book for? Because sometimes it's like that when you read children's books by like people who don't write for children. You're like, is this for a 7-year old? Because it doesn't read like it's for a 7-year old. It reads like it's for me, right? It don't read like it. I don't think the target audience is a 7-year old. And I'm not saying 7-year olds don't deserve literary stories, but I'm like, I don't know. Because if I read that to my nephew, he'd be like, "TT, what is this?" And that's what I'm thinking about. So for me, that was my main beef with this story. Like I think the illustrations were very beautiful. Again, I love Kietse. And I was like, I don't know if this is actually for children. And so for that, I'm gonna give it a B. So that's the recap of my reading year. There were just a lot of books that were just okay. And I don't know. I'm always looking for a really great book. I think for me, when it comes to new releases, my brain just kind of tunes them out. And I'm like, I don't care. And I have such a long backlist that I don't know. I'm always looking for a really great, stellar, amazing book. I really struggle to find those great, stellar, amazing books. But I also think it's important for you to know what is important for you and what you love in a book so that way you can find more of that. Because anytime I ask other people, hey, what do you love in a book? I'm not going to love those things. And the same thing with me. What I love in these books, you may not like them, but I hope that I showed you something new. I showed you something different. I showed you something that you may want to check out in the future. And I think that's a win. While I think this was 36, 35, 36 books this year. Is the end of the year not here yet? And so I'm still planning on reading the Hunger Games trilogy. I've never read it before. And I'm doing a buddy read with people for my job. And so we're all gonna like read and talk about it together. So I'm very excited about it. I've heard that it's one of the few series that even the 15 years, I think it's been out 17 years. The 17 years it's been out, it still holds up. So it's giving like classic, right? And so I'm like, okay, am very excited. I really want to check out this book and see what it's about. Because I've only seen the first Hunger Games movie, and I was very upset because back in high school, they assigned the Hunger Games book when the movie came out. They assigned it to the normal English class, but because I was in AP English, they were like, you can read better than that. Like, you can do better than that. And I'm like, but I want to read what they're reading. And so I think that that's also added to my beef towards the classics because I think that also developmentally stunts people to always have to be like, oh, well, you don't have to read things that are for teenagers. You should read things that are for adults. I'm like, I'm a teenager. Let me read things about being a teenager. That is my beef with Hunger Games. But I'm excited to finally read it and to finally know what this book and what this world and what this series is about. Because I've just heard a lot of things, but I'm going to find out for myself. The question some of you may be asking is, where have I been? That is a very good question. I have not posted long form videos since June of this year. So that's almost 6 years or almost 6 months of me not being here. And a lot of it was in July. My mama had an eye stroke, and so she was the primary caregiver of my brother and my father, who were both disabled. And so I had to be the caregiver of the three of them. And then in August, I moved out of state to start my job, which I'm on vacation for right now. But yeah, and I work as an environmental educator in the Oconee National Forest in Georgia. And so it is a job that I really enjoy. I say that it is like my full-time job is manual labor, and then I teach some kids on the side because that's basically what I'm doing. But it is a job that I really enjoy and that I enjoy doing as well. But part of it is that it requires so much of me mentally and physically and emotionally that like I don't have time to create anything, and it is impacting my creative projects like my podcast, which did come out. Season 10 did come out this past few months, but we had to record most of that before I even left. And then we tried to record an episode while I was there, but it was only like 30 minutes because it was so hard to be able to record there. The internet's not great. All of these different logistic things that are going on that are impacting my ability to do work. I don't have the time to write and things like that. So it's impacting my books. My book 2, Between Us, comes out in January 2027. It's the sequel about the boy. But I don't know about the book after that. Like, will that next book come out? I don't know, because I don't know when I'll be able to find the time to sit down and write and to be able to work on it. And because I'm having to work full time, I don't have the time and the energy to dedicate to creating YouTube videos and to creating writing and to creating podcasts. And so all of my creative projects are having to go on the back burner because I have to get a job. And that's my beef with capitalism. Like, I think a lot of people think when I talk about it ideologically or theoretically, but I'm like, no, this actually impacts me. Like, a lot of people follow my channel because they're like, I love the way you think, you have these big ideas. It's increasingly hard to think when you're exhausted every day, right? And so it impacts my ability to sit down and to think about a concept and really think it through because I'm exhausted. My brain is tired. It's hard for me to read at the end of the day. I struggle to read at the end of it because I'm just like exhausted. I'm depleted. And so, yeah, it just, working full time does impact me overall. I can still enjoy the work, I enjoy the paychecks, but it does deplete me to a point where it's hard to do creative work because that requires so much energy and so much brain power that I just don't have. And so that does impact this channel as well. I think maybe next year I may do like a day in the life as an environmental educator, because I do enjoy my job and it's something that I never knew existed. And so I think I would love to spread awareness about that because I think a lot more people would enjoy a job like this. So I may do more things related to that and to being outdoors and stuff like that. But yeah, it does definitely impact this channel. It impacts me creatively. It impacts everything. So that is the end of this video. I know it's just very long because you get me talking about books. I'm on here all day. But thank you so much for watching it to the end. I hope to see you next year. Bye, y'all.